They do have to get to a certain level, and they do have to have all 3 points against Manchester United. A point would be just enough for Man United to secure their Champions League place. Chelsea also need a draw. They're up against Wolves. Let's hear from Frank Lampard.
We know what's ahead of us. There will be a lot going on Sunday. What's important for the players is they absolutely focus on ourselves, because it is in our own hands. And that's the job I'll do as well. We can't really affect what's going on elsewhere. And we have to try and get over the line. We've got character in the group, we've got quality, we've got a mixture of youth, and hopefully that youthfulness can sometimes help. But we also have players that have been in situations like this before, come to the territory of playing for a top club. And also we should have a feeling of achievement to this point, that if we were offered this at the start of the season when not many people expected us to be in the top 4 race, that we now have it in our own hands. We're at the bridge. We have a really strong opponent coming, obviously, in Wolves. It's up to us. So, yeah, I've got belief in the players. I've seen a lot in the last 2 games, particularly with Manchester United and with Liverpool tonight, of what we're about. It's been a spirit and character in those 2 performances. We have to carry on for one more in the league.
This is not an easy game for Chelsea against Wolves, is it?
No, for me, it's the kind of game that when you look at Wolves and what Wolves are capable of, it's so organised from back to front, midfield, front men, so dangerous. In the pole density, and then got Jimenez, who scores great goals. Traore. It's the kind of game that just can cause Chelsea all sorts of problems. They're going to have to be bang on their game, and you saw them the other day, and yes, they came back into the game a bit with Liverpool, but I think the Wolves will be a lot more of a tougher proposition at Stamford Bridge for them,
especially when they're up against that Chelsea defence, because that's what's cost them points this season, isn't it?
Yeah, I think for Frank, the defence is, they built their defence was, they won titles with their defence, really, with Petr Cech and John Terry and Carvalho, and they had leaders back there. And I think Chelsea, at times, to be fair, Chelsea are the opposite of Wolves, really. They score goals, they're attacking, but I think Wolves have a great goalkeeper settled against Sheffield United. And I think the goals that they concede are not a Champions League side, really.
No, I think there's an interesting... I think it'll be interesting to see what happens in terms of what they actually achieve when the window opens, because clearly they are, as you say, targeting these young attacking players. Obviously, the discussion's ongoing with Kai Havertz as well now, in terms of adding to Timo Werner and Ziyech, the fantastic forward players they're bringing in. But you and I would look at it and think, actually, you've got to address what's going on behind that a little bit as well. So we're wondering, is that then going to follow? And we know they're linked with Ben Chilwell, we know they're interested in Declan Rice, but they might even need more than that. And suddenly when you're saying, well, if you're going to do Havertz, Rice, Chilwell, how much money have they got? We know they got the money from the Hazard deal they didn't spend last summer, and the money from Morata, but I wonder whether or not a little bit the club might be pushing for certain types of signings, and the manager might be pushing for other types of signings. I think he might be thinking, I need to sort things out a bit more at the back. I think the club are thinking Kai Havertz could be one of the best players in the world.
So what, they're talking more on a business point of view?
I think there might be a little bit of that going on, that maybe they're thinking this is an opportunity to get, a player like Havertz who they could, for example, like with Hazard, 5-6 years from now, could sell him to Real Madrid for a lot more money. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm wondering whether that's really the priority for Frank Lampard. He's not going to turn around and say, I don't want Kai Havertz, is he?
No.
But maybe you might think, maybe my priorities lie elsewhere, and I'm wondering whether the balance of the team or the balance of the recruitment is quite right. Nobody would criticise the players they've signed. Absolutely brilliant players, and they're going to be a really exciting team, but you wonder whether that balance. And within that, I also wonder defensively, he doesn't seem to trust an awful lot of the defenders.
No.
Azpilicueta, clearly, Reece James is coming through. What's happened to Tomori?
Yeah.
I mean, he was in the England team.
I liked it. I really liked him.
But he's suddenly out of the picture. And I wonder if, again, you wonder whether the club might be thinking, OK, you have got quite a lot of defenders here, you have got a lot of players, maybe it's up to you to sort it out.
Then you look at it, Jason, like Kurt Zouma weren't playing a while back, now he's brought him back, then he's left Rudiger out, he's stick with Christensen, and he's moving them about.
Yeah.
Then you've got a goalkeeper that's making so many mistakes and letting go. It seems like right in the most important position for me for Chelsea, with the 2 centre-halves and the goalkeepers communicating, that's where they are their weakest. There's too much change going on there. I'm very surprised they're not trying to find centre-halves. You know what I mean?
I think the goalkeeper thing, as we've already talked about David De Gea, I think if you're talking to people at Chelsea privately, if you could get the deal to move Kepa on, would you do it?
Well,
absolutely. And the big regret at Chelsea is obviously at one stage they were after Alisson. and he went to Liverpool, and they bought Kepa, and you know, he's not in the same league at the moment, is he? So I think that's been a big regret from them.
It's one of the stumbling blocks over Kepa and maybe changing the goalkeeper that Chelsea want to get back that huge fee. That
and also because he's still very young. So there's a real fear at Chelsea because they've had this happen to them before. We saw with Salah going, with De Bruyne going, that this goalkeeper, he might become a great goalkeeper. You mentioned before about Spain. There was that whole debate in Spain that Kepa was better than De Gea, wasn't there? You know, that he should be the #1 for the national team, and it shouldn't be De Gea. And we're all thinking, hang on a minute, how can that be the case? So people do still think there's an awful lot of potential there. I do have some sympathy with Kepa because, look at it this way, he's a young guy. And I know he's a wealthy man and everything, but he's a young guy in London on his own during lockdown. It's tough. You know, he was in lockdown living in a flat in Chelsea on his own. You know, and I wonder whether sometimes people forget that effect that can have on somebody as well. You know, and I'm talking to somebody close to him, said that it was tough going for him.
Imagine.
It was tough.
Is it also the case that do goalkeepers, and Alisson came in and made an immediate impact and fit in straight away. De Gea didn't know. It might just be that there is a learning process towards keeping in the Premier League.
I'm not sure. I think when you're as a goalkeeper, it's almost like a ref. You know, they're at their best when you don't notice them, really, aren't they? You know, and I think the mistakes that he's made, I think he's unsettled that defence. I think if you think back to maybe Cavallo or John Terry in that side, you know, JT wouldn't have had that. He wouldn't have. You know, he would have pulled them aside, he would have spoke to them something. And I think for Frank, if I think about those great Chelsea teams, the spine of the team was impeccable, wasn't it? You know, right throughout the whole team was Makelele and Frank and Drogba, in goal with Cech and Terry. Frank doesn't have that. So if you go into a must-win game, who's he relying on in goal at the back? He's not sure. 100% he's not sure. I think he knows they can create chances and score goals. So if it's a goalkeeper, Kepa, he costs a lot of money. He's got to perform. If he doesn't perform, it's been 2 years. If I was manager and I was Frank, I'd be looking to pull the trigger.
I know I'd do. I'd go to Atletico Madrid and say, you can have Kepa, we'll have Oblak.
Give us Oblak.
Plus how much?
Yeah. And what do you want to do about it? Because obviously, you know, he's a lot younger than Oblak, but in the way that Alisson transformed that Liverpool, and obviously with Ederson at Man City to a a Oblak in that Chelsea team, suddenly you're thinking, that's a very different prospect.
Yeah, but Jason, the mere fact that he would drop Kepa with what Kepa's costs, and he's made mistakes where he deserved to be dropped, and bring in Willy Caballero, who I believe is not a very good #2.
He's getting older as well.
Exactly,
I mean,
it says everything to me. They'd probably get rid of him if they could, but I'm not sure who would take him now.
Talk about the frailties of Chelsea. You talked about the fact that Wolves are perfectly poised to take advantage of those. So of the teams that are going for the Champions League places, who do you think out of Manchester United, Leicester and Chelsea, who are the two that are going to be in the Champions League next season?
I'm gonna say Man United and Chelsea.
Okay.
The other day I said Wolves though. I'm going to go Man United and Chelsea.
Yeah, and keep your powder dry because we might have predictions later. In the case you don't want to give us too much away. What do you think?
I'm the same. I think United, you know, I think they beat Leicester just because of Leicester's defensive issues, and I think Frank they'll do enough to get a result. But I think that will be potentially the best game that Chelsea Wolves won.
Yeah.
I agree. I'm just really sorry for Wolves, really, that they haven't got the chance. I think they deserve the chance for a Champions League place. That draw, it was the draw at Burnley, wasn't it? I think it was. Yeah. That was the one that did it for them. I know they feel very sore about everything, so I think they will be going to Chelsea to try and win that game, to show everyone, and also they want to be back in the Europa League, by the way. I mean, they're in it at the moment. They might even get a Champions League place by winning that. But, you know, obviously they want to be back in European competitions. They're a club that's embraced it, and they really feel that they benefited from it, so fair play to them.
Yeah, we will just see what happens on the last day of the season.